Ready? We'll call this meeting in order tonight. Tonight's Monday, September 16, 2024. This is your Village Council regular session. So you can join me in pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just take a quick moment of silence here. If you do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Fields.
Here.
Trustee Wagner.
Here.
Trustee Reister.
Here.
Trustee Olson.
Here.
Trustee Kissinger. President Pro Tem Keller.
Here.
President Frisbee.
Here. Trustee Kissinger is online with us tonight. He's at his brother's wedding, so he can speak at any time. We'll look forward to it. He just cannot vote tonight, so thank you all for that. We have an agenda in front of us. Was there any changes or additions to the agenda, Jim?
No, I don't have any. Mr. Kissinger just texted me, though. He's waiting for his Teams program to
load?
upload, and then he'll be on.
Don't give me a reason to slow down, Chad. So we have no scheduled appearances, and I see no public officials in the audience tonight.
Point of order, I'll move to approve the agenda.
Yeah, it would be the next thing on our list.
Trustee Wagner, support.
You have some, all those in favor for the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Thank you, Carl, for that. Takes me to the president's time. So tonight we're going to have a introduction and discussion. I crossed it off. With McKenna, Mr. Kyle Mucha. He presented to the Planning Commission this past Monday, and I had an opportunity to talk with the team. And, you know, this is something that I really think is probably one of the single most important things we're going to do that's going to have some generational impact. So let's really take it very seriously and give it our full attention to make sure we do the right thing. You know, there's areas of the village we just want to make sure they're zoned correctly for future growth, residential growth, and whatnot. So that was it. We'll move on to citizens' comments. If there's a citizen that would like to address for agenda items only, there'll be another opportunity for non-agenda items. Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the general consent agenda. It's our meeting from our regular council meeting, August 19th. Warrant reports, event requests, a Distant Whistle Anniversary, Oktoberfest on 28th of September. Aubra Celebration of Life at the Pavilion, and Blake Tyler graduation June 15th of 2025. And there was no correspondence, so if there was any corrections or changes,
Move to approve and submit.
Support.
we have motion to support. Will you roll call, please, Christian?
Trustee Olson.
Yes.
Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Wagner.
Yes.
Trustee Fields.
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller.
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. So item 11, we have a zoning board of appeals variance request for 120 Mill Street. We'll need to enter into a zoning board of appeals.
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are officially in the zoning board of appeals. I believe Mr. Mucha is going to present to us now.
Thank you, Mr. Frisbee. So before you tonight is a variance request from Mr. Benjamin, and I'm going to butcher the last name. So I'm Mr. Benjamin G. On behalf of 120 South Mill Street. And our understanding is he's seeking 3 variance requests. The first to obtain relief from the setback requirement as stipulated in section 475-118 from a 10-foot side yard setback in the R2 district. To obtain relief from setback requirements as stipulated in section 475-118, maximum building coverage in the rear yard, 15% in the R2 district, and to also obtain relief from the setback requirement as stipulated in section 475-116, which states any building constructed on a lot abutting a lake, pond, stream, or river shall be set back at least 100 feet from the high water line. So we have done our review of the request by Mr. Benjamin here. Noted existing conditions that the home most likely predates, some of our regulations within this regard. It is an estimated 808 square foot, single-family residential. There also are considerations within our variance approval that we need to address or highlight in order for, recommendation for support or denial to be given. The first one being strict compliance with the standard would unreasonably prevent the landowner from using the property for permitted use or would render conformity necessarily burdensome. We note that the existing home would be considered non-conforming due to the location within the 100-foot setback requirement from a lake. Further, given the existing district regulations for a front yard setback of 35 feet, the parcel effectively becomes unbuildable, meaning that based on the 100-foot setback from the river, stream, lake, and pond, and then 35-foot from the front yard setback, you have now effectively shrunken to a point of non-use the buildable envelope on this parcel. Number two, the variance will do substantial justice to the applicant as well as other property owners. We found that it's not anticipated that granting the variance request will greatly impact neighboring properties. The zoning board will need to make that determination on their own after they hear from a public, comment. Three, a lesser variance than requested will not give substantial relief to the applicant and or be consistent with justice to other property owners. We find that a lesser variance than requested may not provide substantial relief to the applicant. A lesser variance would be significantly impact site design and may become burdensome to the applicant. Four, the problem resulting from the need for the variance has not been self-created by the applicant or the applicant's predecessors. We note that the residential home was not erected by the applicant and the existing footprint is beyond the applicant's control. Therefore, we find that the problem is not self-created. Self-created being that the applicant themselves or a property owner has constructed or erected a portion of the structure that would not meet current code. Staff findings, our recommendation based on the findings of facts in here lead to a support of the request. Number one being the need for the variance is not self-created. The applicant can still use the home for a residential property but would then be burdensome by the setbacks. The building may have been constructed prior to the adoption of the zoning ordinance regulations as it pertains to 475118 and 475116. Three, approval of the variance is not adverse to the interest of the neighboring property owners. Four, the applicant cannot construct the building addition further from the water's edge, and the request seems reasonable given the siting of the existing structures on the property, siting being location of the existing structures. Five, the residential home is currently non-conforming due to the property width and proximity to the lake or pond as it directly relates to the regulations outlined in section 475116 and section 475118. And then number six, strict compliance with the setback requirements from the lake, front yard may make this property unbuildable. I will pause there. I don't know, Mr. Mallory, did I miss anything on that? Or? So based on those findings, we are in support or are able to recommend a positive finding that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant the requested variances, subject to any additional public comment during a public hearing.
Any questions by the trustees? Any comments?
President Frisbee, I have one.
Excuse me, yes, sir.
Kyle, the question I would have is, so I know we talk a lot about this when we go into appeals for zoning variance, is to do with other similar parcels and nearby residents or parcels. Do we have an expectation that we're going to see or could see others like this? Like, do we have similarly situated parcels nearby this that we could see similar requests in the future? And that you feel this would be similar enough going forward that that could be applied to others if requested?
It's a multi-pronged approach, Mr. Wagner.
Okay.
On that one. There are, our estimate is 118 parcels within the village that are directly related or impacted by a stream, lake, river, or pond. Further, last week, and I'll get into this later on in reports, Planning Commission is entertaining reducing the 100-foot requirement in order to alleviate a lot of these concerns as well. There are most of the homes or significant homes along Mill Street that, while we didn't analyze those in this regard, lead us to believe could become problematic as well.
And thank you. I said that because I know we talked earlier in the year about addressing these issues similarly, so I'm glad that that's still consistent.
We're gonna address them yet tonight on the agenda with part of the text amendments, and we'll have the timeline out, but the quick story is that should be published to be able to vote, I think the third, second month, it'll be published for the planning commission. Their recommendation would then come to the council the third Monday of October that will positively impact all of those addresses on Mill Street.
Mr. President, I'm
Sir.
curious as to what improvements you're looking to make on your property.
My soon-to-be wife Emily here has 2 more kids,
Okay.
and so this needs space for 2 more kids.
So you're just looking to add bedrooms and
Yeah, 1 bedroom.
homes, okay,
1.5 baths.
okay. All right, yeah, well, congratulations, but thank you.
That was one of my questions also, is because it really doesn't stipulate, we're just asking for relief from the, and not really what the intent is. But I'm sure that'll come in front of the planning commission and this council once you have that established correctly, if they're gonna add and build.
Well, it'll go through the building permit in Gales with buildings. So then it would fit the criteria with this approval that a building permit could be issued.
Gotcha. Yep. Chris Hamilton is very good. She answered my phone call. I didn't even know she was retired. Really? Yeah, she was quite a help to me with another issue that I had, so. Was there any further questions? Chad, would you have any questions? Give you the opportunity.
No questions on my end.
So we have a request in front of us to approve relief from the zoning ordinance standards as it relates to the minimum setback requirements. What is this council's desire?
Trustee Wagner, I'll move that we approve.
Mr. President, you do need to open a public.
I do need, I actually
public hearing,
need
please.
public comments. Jim just reminded me of that, too.
I can do one small comment.
Yes,
I talked with my wonderful neighbor Denny and just went over the details of the build, and he said he was fine with it. Just to make sure that everything was nice and clear with everybody.
any other public comments like to make? Hearing none, we have that motion in front of us. What is this council's desire? Did I hear a motion to?
Support.
We have motion and support. Let's do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Olson,
Yes,
Trustee Fields,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes.
President
So
Frisbee, I move that we go back into regular session.
Support.
We have motion and support to go back into regular session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we are now back in our regular session council meeting. So we have action items in front of us tonight. Did we do a roll call, correct?
We did for the approval, yeah.
Then we'll need a roll call to roll back into, no, so we're
No.
good. So we have some action items in front of us tonight, and as we spoke earlier, Kyle Mucha is going to do another presentation on zoning text amendments.
Mr. Mallory, do you have a preference, sir, if we start with the text or which ones?
No, same probably order as we did in the planning commission.
Thank you, President Frisbee. So the Planning Commission staff and our team have been diligently combing through the zoning ordinance the past year as we have run across new site developments, Bigby's being one, conceptual plans as well on others on West Prairie Street, resident concerns and updates from the regulations as it pertains to residential property itself. So as we have compiled our list throughout here of the potential amendments, these are just what staff, McKenna team, and the Planning Commission have discussed so far. A more refined version is anticipated to be presented to the Planning Commission at their public hearing in October, and then presented back to council for their review and adoption. As the council may recall, last fall, we did update some of the provisions for the industrial district as well to talk about reduced side yards, front yards, rear yards, lot coverage. Finding in our analysis as well regarding the R2 district, which encompasses a significant portion of our downtown, our east side of the village. We note that there are provisions in here regarding the minimum lot width, minimum lot area, maximum lot coverage, front, side, and rear yard setbacks that pose challenging to existing properties. Doing some of our analysis, we found that most of our residential properties in the R2 district, especially in the core downtown area as well, do not meet our current standard of 15,000 square feet for the R2 district. So therefore, working with our Planning Commission, we are recommending that we reduce that down to 5,500 square feet. That's more in line with our existing properties. So take a lot of our R2 district parcels that are not conforming with our lot area and bring them more in line to conformity. In doing so, we also note that we need to reduce the minimum lot width in order to get us our minimum lot area. We are recommending a lot width reduction from 100 feet to 60 feet in the R2 district. Using our county GIS system, we've noted that a lot of our parcels already are around the 60-foot mark. That is not site survey, but it's just taking from what we have on file and measuring it across the road from property corner to property corner around the 60-foot area, well shy of 100 feet as required right now by our R2 district. Maximum lot coverage, Planning Commission is recommending through discussion, nothing until public hearing, that we increase our maximum lot coverage to 40% if we are going to reduce our area to 5,500 square feet for the minimum. So it allows for a higher percentage of a property to be covered by structures. In doing so as well, they are recommending or discussing a reduction of 15 feet to 20 feet in the front yard, and also from 35 feet to 20 feet in the rear yard. That would increase the building envelope in our R2 districts and allow for larger siting areas in these sites. As it stands right now, working with Mr. Mallory on some of these properties, we note that there are probably a few homes, if not more, that do not meet our current 35-foot front yard setback. If we took that from our property line, we find that most of our 35 feet would be into the home itself already, causing a significant amount of nonconformities. So we are recommending some changes to our R2 district. Our site plan review criteria as well list out when site plans are required and when they are not required and what would trigger a site plan review. In working with the village and Mr. Mallory the past year and a half, we have found that we need to update when our site plans are required, when they're not required, and when we can administratively review them through staff level engagement with our building officials, with Mr. Mallory and others on our team. So we have proposed some modification language that outlines further details of when site plans are required, when a site plan is not required, and then when administrative review up to a certain point could approve site plan modifications. I will pause there because we're going to go over a lot and I don't want anyone to lose track. Any comments there? If not, I will continue to move along. We also are looking at our nonconformity sections. There are some provisions in our existing zoning ordinance that talk about what a nonconforming is, what a nonconforming use is, and then we run afoul in here of when a nonconforming can be rebuilt. I gave the example to the Planning Commission the other week that, as some of this language was drafted, when it talks about an act of God, hailstorm damage, we probably don't think about it happening to us, but in May, obviously that happened to one of our neighbors to the north, and makes it problematic for any homes that may be considered non-conforming, such as a lot of our downtown residential area, problematic if they ever needed to rebuild because of a natural disaster. So we are proposing some modifications to what we considered non-conforming as well, and when a resident or property owner could reconstruct to an existing footprint should it be damaged by a severe storm or other outside entity. And I believe Mr. Mallory and I will work with our village attorney as well. She had some comments on that, so I will invite her to the discussion to help clean up that as well for nonconformities. The next item that we do not have any provisions for currently are mobile vendors, our mobile food vendors. So working with a colleague in our firm, he presented some regulations for our consideration, another community on the east side of the state, to deal with mobile vendors. Throughout our memo, I list here mobile vendors and mobile food vendors. We'd like to use mobile vendors kind of as a collection of the term instead of differentiating between mobile vendor versus mobile food truck. Keep it broad. So within this outline, we have presented some considerations for Planning Commission and then also for council when we get to that stage of when mobile vendors would be regulated and when they would not, what districts they would go in. So far, we've drafted it for the commercial and industrial, business operation days, storage of equipment, private property, traffic, signage, waste. So other teeth, if you will, in order to help, allow those who would like to have mobile vendors on site, but then also help protect the character of the community as well from potential adverse impacts from mobile vendors. The Planning Commission had a little bit of discussion on allowing mobile vendors in residential areas. I believe we just settled on maintaining it in commercial and industrial with the understanding that these are for items or vendors who will have foot traffic continuously. And while this does not prevent anyone from having a carpet cleaning service or other utility work in a residential area, this is targeted towards those who would have a constant turnover of traffic. We felt it prudent not to recommend to have that in the residential areas, just because that's not what your residential areas are for. However, that is open to discussion still further with the council if they would so like. But our recommendation is to keep that to commercial and industrial, where they are more anticipated to have that higher foot traffic already established. Questions on that, Mr. Wagner?
Just one, so, just thinking of like possible instances that might fall into that, like someone has a birthday party, they want to have a mobile food truck at their home in this area. How would that fall currently or under these proposed changes?
I would treat that as a private residential event, and under these being no regulations, that would be a trigger, Mr. Wagner, if they want to open it up to the neighborhood as a residential area. That
So
would then be in
that would be a
violation of
qualifier.
these, yes.
Okay.
But if a resident would wish to have a mobile vendor come to their residential property, offer it for a wedding reception, so long as it's for their own private event, that's where staff will have to obviously do our due diligence to determine if that is a trigger or not. But our intent on this is for that continual commercial foot traffic sale.
Right, like open to the public versus
Yes.
private and continual versus
Yes, sir.
standalone? Okay, good to know, thank you.
I have a question real quick. Kyle, how's this pertain to, let's say, ice cream trucks that drive around in the summertime, local neighborhoods?
So those are on public streets,
Okay.
and I have no jurisdiction in that regard.
Okay, fine.
Yep,
Just
this
wanna
would just
double
be
check.
for, this would be for that. So long as, Mr. Keller, I'm not aware of any other ordinance that would prevent that. That's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. This would be more for a vendor setting up on property, so. Mhm. Special land uses, we have noted as well over the past 18 months that our existing zoning ordinance details special land uses to come before council. Vicksburg is probably only one community that I'm aware of in the state. There may be a few others, but it is highly unusual to have a special land use come before the Zoning Board of Appeals for approval. So our recommendation is to bring special land uses back to the Planning Commission where they can review it in conjunction with a site plan, hold the public hearing, and keep it within one body entity, instead of having site plan review through Planning Commission, special land use come to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we're trying to clean that up. At least our recommendation is to. And then, Mr. Wagner, to your point earlier, setbacks from lakes, ponds, streams, and rivers. We are proposing, I know initially in our memo, we outlined 50 feet. I know I've asked a colleague to review that. We may propose to Planning Commission with Mr. Mallory's insight, reducing that further. I have reached out to our village engineer. He is not aware of any regulations that would trigger that. Kicked it back to us being a zoning issue. So we may treat that maybe at a lower setback requirement than the 50 feet to help prevent any of these additional concerns. Without doing further review, I don't think I'd advocate for anything less than 25 to 30, knowing that the intent there is to help protect the streams, lakes, waters, and river bodies. So even if we do reduce the R2 district to 20 feet in the rear yard, it may not be bad to still have a little higher standard. So that way, if you are close to that water, you are giving a little bit of additional buffer. That's something, though, we will continue to dialogue with the Planning Commission on. But even reviewing this and then hearing Mr. Schwartz's comments, I may ask the Planning Commission to consider a lesser than 50 feet. So that would then take care of the map in here that has 118 properties who will still be impacted by this regulation, but then such as those over on West Prairie who are against the pond and who have the ice cream shop and the pirate ship would really reduce the nonconformity of their lots with this current regulation. So those are some of the changes that we have found in the past 12 months that we would like to help correct. I will pause there.
Chad, would you have any questions?
Or any additional
Feel
insight?
free to speak up if you do.
I don't have any at this time. I was at the planning commission, so we spoke in depth about this last Monday.
Mr. Mallory, would you like me to talk about our parking as well?
Sure.
Okay. We've also discussed, done the analysis of our parking regulations throughout our zoning ordinance. In this regard, there is a big push nationally and through the state to reduce parking regulations, not to completely remove them, but to lessen the stringency of them in this regard. The idea is that we no longer really need a sea of asphalt out there for businesses. We want to help promote multimodal transportation options. So we are looking, nationally and through the state level to a degree to remove the need for acres and acres of asphalt parking lots. So within that, we've found that there's provisions in our ordinance, currently section 475-114, motor vehicle parking and storage. That is a standalone outside of our parking regulations. Our initial consideration before the Planning Commission was to bring that in-house into the parking regulations portion of the zoning ordinance itself and not be a standalone ordinance provision. That then further titles us into retitling property owner's responsibility as it's listed in our zoning ordinance to general off-street parking standards, and then adding provisions for applicability, change in use or intensity. So when a parking regulation ordinance would trigger, when property owners would need to bring their site into compliance with the current standards, additional off-street parking maximum. So instead of having 400 or 500 spaces, depending on the use, or 80, however it happens to be, we set a cap of how many we are willing to permit them to have. We also detail review procedures, location, touch on residential parking, storage and repair as prohibited, and then encourage banked parking. Banked parking being a portion of a site development that is set aside as maintained green space, such as common area lawn, that then if the business grows, they would then add their parking as they grow as well. So instead of requiring a business to install 80 spaces for when they open the doors, they could do it in phases, so long as they have set aside space for that expansion. So they wouldn't be able to build on that expandable portion. It would just be maintained as lawn or other natural vegetation, and then as the use grew, they would then have that set aside. Building permit application parking plan, we find that if we, this section 475-123, if we are able to add in the already mentioned provisions, this could be removed because now it's redundant, so that removes some sections, so that is helpful for us. Provisions of parking space and manner and location. We've offered some modification considerations to Planning Commission on this, which details no parking areas, parking of motor vehicles in residential zones. Currently, our ordinance states shall be limited to 2 passenger vehicles and not more than 1 commercial vehicle. However, in our analysis, we do not find that we define a commercial vehicle. So is that a semi-truck? Is that a tow truck? Is that a vacuum truck? or is that someone's pickup with a landscaping logo on it? So we are recommending to Planning Commission that we define what a commercial vehicle is, so that way, that helps hopefully reduce any ill considerations for allowing those types of vehicles in residential areas. Parking areas, spaces, and lots, section 475, 125. We get into here a little bit about surface and drainage, offering some considerations for modifications on those as well. I know currently we have provisions that say it must be a dust-free surface, but we don't define what a dust-free surface is. So working with our engineering team, we'll try to see if we can clean that language up as well to offer a little bit more clarity. And then as well, within to 125, we detail some other provisions such as there's lighting standards that's referenced in our parking ordinance that we are recommending be brought out into its own lighting standards. You know, no closer than 5 feet from a property line that is existing. We're not asking for any changes there. And then as we move forward, we found just some generalized notes in our current standards that I'm happy to talk about or stop rambling. Council's discretion. Section 475, 126, we get into minimum required parking spaces. We've laid out what our existing standards are within this table and put it into a more user-friendly format. As it stands right now, it's broken up into the zoning districts, so you have to hunt a little bit for it. We find that if we can do a use table for this, it'd be a little bit more easier and user-friendly to anyone coming in, especially your planning staff who have to hunt for this all the time. Mr. Mallory would be able to post this as well in any kind of development package that he gets inquired about. From there, if we move it into a use table, we are suggesting some modifications to the minimum parking requirements. I believe the only area that we've really supported an increase is for some residential areas, such as single-family, two-family homes. Our current standard is 1 space per each dwelling. You know, realistically, we understand that most dwelling units do not have 1 vehicle. So therefore, we're suggesting that if we increase it to 2 per dwelling unit, even though hopefully most residential developments will include that already, it's clearly a requirement in here. There are some other provisions that we list in here for institutional uses that we don't have a default standard, so we are suggesting a default standard. So if the use is not listed, we don't have to guess on where it will fall. We just would describe that if a use is not listed, we use the default standard. Because as most of us know, we cannot predict every type of use that will come in to the village. So therefore, we're trying to help broaden that to an extent. Nursing home and home for the aged, we're recommending so many spaces per bed. When we get into place of assembly, we're modifying that a little bit to be a little bit more concise on how many spaces might be needed. As much as we don't want to see, again, a sea of asphalt out there, we do understand that places of assembly such as schools and others do have people that drive and do have high intensity use, especially home openers with bulldogs. So we are trying to offer some additional clarity into that. Commercial uses as well. There are some listed items within here that do not have any current standards, so we have to use this in the very most professional term, guesstimate what we can put in there. So as the proposed alternative, we are trying to offer some clarity of to what that may look like for the village. Some areas as well, if we can point your attention to supermarkets under commercial uses, our existing standards based on floor area is how it's calculated currently. We're advocating for just a simple standard across the board, regardless of how many floors they have. Other items such as wholesale service establishments, and again, uses not specified, we're advocating for a blanket use. For clarity, the UFA is a usable floor area. It's one way of measurement. Another one is gross floor area, where so usable takes out any of our hallways, closets, bathrooms that we know your patrons are not actively visiting, so it reduces the amount of space we needed, where gross would take the entire portion of the building. So using usable floor area is a benefit to developers. So, and then also within industrial uses as well. Offices, business and professional, our current standard is one space for 200 square feet. We're advocating to increase that to one for 250 square feet. General industrial manufacturing, our existing standard is one space per each 3 employees on maximum shift. We are modifying that, or suggesting modifications to planning commission to do one space per 750 square feet gross floor area. So shifting the paradigm a little bit of how we'd calculate that. Same thing with warehousing establishments. There is no standard. We're suggesting maybe a 1 to 1,500 ratio. From there, I will pause. Questions, comments, concerns? And I will be.
I got a quick question. You're talking about commercial vehicles on private property. Right now, it's 1 to 2 vehicles per property? Is that what you're saying?
It just details, Mr. Olson, that you can have a commercial vehicle, but it
Oh,
doesn't detail
okay.
the type of
Do
commercial.
we have a limit right now on vehicles on the property?
I don't
I don't
have
believe
any.
we do. You know, and see, that's a problem. I've got 2 in my neighborhood right now that are, they park 4 cars in the driveway and 2 to 3 in the street. We have another one, and Tim could back me up on this, on V Avenue, that they have 4 vehicles in the driveway and a couple of construction trailers and other miscellaneous vehicles in the side yard. Now, I take it that that's illegal under our current system.
I don't have that handy for you, Mr. Olson. I would
Okay.
need to review. No, a fair amount of communities we work with do have community quality standards that would prohibit outdoor storage of trailers, items like that, unless it's on an improved surface to
Yeah.
help, so
Okay, so no matter what, we need to work on that.
that would be yes, sir.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Lastly, with our with our parking regulations, Mr. Mallory, myself, and Ms. Coney have reviewed the best practices under the Redevelopment Ready Communities, which is a program under the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. So it's RRC under the MEDC. And in doing so, in order for us the village to become certified, essentials? Essentials, there are provisions that the MEDC is seeking for communities to have as it relates to parking regulations. In going through the suggested modifications that the RRC lists out, we find that a few of these are attainable within the village with, I'll say, minimal change to our current ordinance, one being bicycle parking, so requiring any new development or a trigger, so forth, of development to include bicycle parking near the street to offer that multimodal transportation. Banked parking, as already referenced earlier, a reduction or elimination of required parking when on-street or public parking is available. So if we have any of our commercial areas that have a public lot near them, they would be able to utilize this system, incorporating those spaces for their calculations. We understood that doing our analysis, a lot of our downtown businesses, if we applied a stringent gross floor area or any other type of parking regulation, could not meet them. There is not based on how we are developed, we do not have the ability for each individual business to meet parking requirements. So we're offering a reduction or elimination in off-street required parking if there is other available to the community. And then also electric vehicle charging stations as another alternative. That is a recommendation by the RRC in their guidebook. So we felt that those 4 areas at a minimum would meet our requirements for the parking regulations in our zoning ordinance for implementation. So.
It's exactly what you were just talking about, I think. I just want to clarify. I know that the beauty shop that I go to definitely would not meet this parking regulation, but they do have other spaces down the road a little bit, and that's what you're talking about. If those are available, then they meet the criteria,
Yes.
correct? Okay, thank you.
Plus, Ms. Gale, if I could be a little selfish, we have a wonderful brand-new sidewalk system that's only a few years old that it'd be great to help activate and engage those patrons with, instead of having continual parking along there. So, like I said, if I could be a little selfish as a resident here, that is a very wonderful, nice item that, with parking that we have, it is available around there. I know Mr. Mallory has done studies on that. Parking spaces themselves, I do not believe is the issue. It's just the location and the perceived location of those spaces.
What you have to think about is you're a young man. There are many, many people going to these beauty shops that can't walk as far as you can.
So in summary, Planning Commission has been very, very busy with these items lately, especially with staff's full engagement on this as well, knowing that these are some of the, I don't want to say hurdles, but these are some of the items that we seem to consistently run into that I'd want to be mindful, I don't want to say cause grief, but that if amended would significantly improve our efficiency on some of these development reviews. So, I don't know, Mr. Mallory, is there anything else you would like me to touch on, sir?
No, I think we're looking for input from the council and also timeline. We're looking to have it appropriately published for the planning commission meeting for the public hearing in the second Monday of October, and to what would be in front of the planning commission is a recommendation to move to the council the third Monday of October for final approval. So that's our timeline, and we've discussed this now for well over a year. In fact, talked about it in our strategic planning to complete. So we're just trying to check those boxes off.
I would just like to thank Kyle, because when I got this packet, I went, oh boy. But honestly, as I was reading through it, I truly understood what you were doing, and I appreciate all the work that you put forth.
Well, and I'd also, there's a lot of kudos to Mr. Mallory as well, as he is, the prime contact that engages with our investors, our stakeholders in the community, who then shares with me the concerns that they raise. And his mentality has really been, how can we address this so it is more user-friendly for our residents, our stakeholders, our business investors as well. So that is his mandate to us. So it's refreshing to have him on that side of the table with us as well, to move this along, to understand what the challenges he's seen from our stakeholders are on this, and then to help hopefully get over those as well. So.
I had a quick question. It's more of a 5,000-foot question, but the R2, some of the proposed changes of setbacks, does that have any crossover with R4? Do we have any conflicts with that type of build-out with a smaller setback?
We can continue to look at that, Mr. Frisbee, in that regard. When we looked at this for the R2, modifying these proposed schedule regulations, we understood that there's a lot of properties that do not currently comply. So I think you're driving at, and please correct me if you're wrong.
Future builds. I understand what we're trying to do with our current housing market, but for the future, does this set some precedent that we may not want to have for future builds?
I don't think it sets a precedent, because each individual improvement or issue would come in front of the governmental bodies for the support and ultimate approval. On this specific to R2, which the area, it's our oldest housing stock in the core of Vicksburg. And really, when you look at it, I'm not quite sure where they came up with these setbacks, because none of the houses, and when I say none of the houses, and we're talking in the hundreds of houses. And I don't think we also looked, I don't think in the area that there's any vacant lot in that R2 area throughout the village. So it was just, okay, what best fits this area, community, and then we were able to use some real examples that had come forward. One predominant was, to put a 5-foot, very nice porch from the front of the building, and when you measure the setbacks actually were in the mid living room range that was already existing. So
Yeah, our front porch had,
But specific to your question, anything in any R1, R4 would be a standalone issue or discussion.
the question's kind of twofold, just for my edification and also for the trustees here, that very specific, we have zones. So when we look at the map, we need to look at what zones are R2, R4, R1, you know? So it's more of a, to learn and educational on that question, so.
I believe that, Mr. Miller, I think you and I dealt with a property owner on Frakes, that's a street name, across from Sunset. There's maybe a vacant lot over there for what they wanted to do. But given the setback requirements, it was not attainable without variance relief. So I think that's
80% of the
one property.
zoning requests that have come to us have been a direct result of our older housing community, so. And that's a great effort, and what you've done and what Jim and his staff has done is tremendous. I know you have been working on this for a year and a half, if not longer, so we appreciate it and look for your guidance.
So I do want to add the footnote. I mean, as we continue with these ones, we'll continue to, look at any other provisions that we know need to be addressed, and we'll, Mr. Mallory and myself and our village attorney will keep a little tally list, and hopefully after, we get through October, that tally list will be a lot shorter, but we'll continue as we move through these reviews, Mr. Frisbee, to note of any concerns that may arise, where it's like, hey, let's add this to the, list of items that maybe next spring we'll come back and say, all right, here's what we've heard the past 6 to 8 months. Here's another round of anything that we may need to modify further. But we do try to be diligent, Mr. Frisbee, on that as well, and keep a running list of anything that could be concerning for us, so.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done. Was there any further questions for Kyle? Thanks so much. We look forward to it, to taking it to the next phase.
Of course.
Have a good night, Kyle.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Did you add this to the agenda?
Pardon me?
Was this added to the agenda?
Okay.
So the next action item in front of us is Sunset Lake Kayak Rental Agreement. So this has been a little bit of a discussion, and Manager Mallory is taking it and taking it to the next level, so I'll let him kind of outline it for us.
Yeah, the kayaks.
The kayak, yeah.
Yeah, this came out of the Parks and Rec Committee as one of their items for the improvements of the Parks and Rec system, and incorporated in the 24-25 fiscal year budget, and also was presented to the council. So it is budgeted funds. There is one, length of term we originally looked at was 3 years, but the company and with the initial investment not changing, it actually would be a 5-year commitment. Starting May 1st, we would pay the $20,000 May 1st to start it, but it would cover over 5 years. So then Michelle's expertise will end up charging it off to the appropriate fiscal years. So it actually, it's not really, we didn't ever look at it as a revenue making, even though it's a 50-50 revenue share. We will have the ability to create free days or weekends to enable people to enjoy this. It's going to be 2 kayaks and then 2 stand-up paddle boards will be the option. Yes, and should, depend upon Michigan weather, pretty committed to having it in place by May 1st of 2025. And then once we get closer, we'll do a lot more marketing in that with it, but we're recommending to move forward.
I have a Question, is this going to be at Sunset Lake? Is that where
Yes.
it's going to be?
Yes.
Thank you.
It'll be just off the beach areas where we're talking right now.
And we've looked at our liabilities and.
This was, I sent the contract to our attorney Catherine Kaufman and her team. On the initial contract had 4 or 5 different recommendations, and the company incorporated all of their recommendations. So,
Any other questions? Chad?
I would just like to comment that this was one of the things that came out of not just Parks and Rec, but the strategic planning sessions and the input from the community about how we could best utilize our parks. And we have all of this great green space and water, and so having some of the recreation part of the park, this seemed like a good fit, and glad to see it coming across the finish line.
I would just say the same thing that Wendy did. This came out of our sessions and then kind of went beyond those from Parks and Rec when we were both on it together. So it's nice to see it make it to this level even.
Any other questions? If not, we have a action item. The staff is recommending motion to support approval and manager enter in a contract with Rent LLC to provide a rental kayak station, which is council's desire.
I motion to approve.
Trustee Wagner, I support.
Will you do a roll call, please, Christian?
Trustee Olson,
Yes?
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Fields,
Yes?
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes, motion carries. So we got a little bit of a discussion tonight. I think if you all had an opportunity to look at the comments that we had on the fire board audit. We've got a few options in front of us, and let's definitely have some discussion tonight. Well, let's go ahead and kind of break, we'll have some discussion before we even enter into a motion or. So we have a couple of options. The South County Fire Authority audit is historically listed in part under the heading Significant Audit Findings. The following: we consider the South County Fire Authority's internal control over financial reporting to determine the audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances for the purpose of expressing our opinions on financial statements, but not the purpose of expressing opinion of the effectiveness of authority's internal control. Accordingly, we do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the authority's internal control. So there is some concerns in some of the comments that have come back from the audit year and year over. And, you know, it's coming to light with some of the other municipalities. I believe the township has not approved the audit just based on the comments. And I don't know if they made denied it and had expectations or an option, but I think they just flat out denied it. And tonight we have an opportunity, and Schoolcraft, the Village of Schoolcraft also is voting on it. But there's some weaknesses in there that I personally believe that we can tighten up pretty easily and without a lot of financial burden on the taxpayers. And at the end of the year, it's going to make the auditing procedure much easier. And we have presented this, Carl on our behalf has presented it to the fire board about having either at least a quarterly, if not a monthly, professional accounting firm come in and do, to bring it up to code. So at the end of the year, when they do their financial audit, everything is in place. So currently it's done on an accounting cash basis versus what auditors and the government look at an accrual basis. And so they have to make all these changes. And when Jim comes to us and puts in the, what's the term for it, when we rectify a financial position. Reconciliation. Yeah.
Budget.
That's all done, and Jim's staff does that, so he doesn't have to do all at the end of the year. So we have, our books are kept up by an outside firm. So when the end of the year, everything is in the order the auditor expects. and it just makes everything. So, yeah, it's gonna cost the municipalities a little bit more money to hire a professional, an accountant, but I think the product at the end of the year is gonna be much better and actually cheaper to do. So I'm not gonna throw out some numbers of financial impact, but my position on it is they just bought almost $1 million fire truck. We're moving into the 21st century. We've got to be a model government, and not only ourselves, but all the communities and the entities we deal with. So my expectation and my desire is that they have an auditing firm get rid of these comments in there. A note 3 in the audit was they have an unsecured $1.2 million. And that's a big concern, and it's been a lingering concern of theirs. So these are just things that we feel need to be addressed. And the way the audit is presented, it just leaves too many questions in a lot of people's minds. You know, they're going to be spending a lot of money. We have to look forward at a new building. And I say we, the authority, has to find a new building at some point in time. You know, the firefighters pay. We need to address these guys that are putting their lives on the line for us for literally pretty insignificant pay for what they do. So there's a lot of things that I think that board can do better. And we're just trying to move that forward. So we have in front of us tonight their audit. You know, we can approve it as it is. We can approve it with the audit with conditions, or don't approve the audit with stated improvements. So I open it up to the floor to the trustees.
Yeah, President Frisbee, if I
Yes, sir.
can. Just so that the board understands, as President Frisbee said, this isn't new comments. These aren't new comments. They've had these comments for I don't know how long. The problem is this is a multi-million-dollar governmental entity that operates. This is the taxpayers' money. It's not the entity's money, it's the taxpayers. And they need to show good governance in doing this. This is not a mom and pop operation. Nobody's being accused of any improprieties or anything else. It's just, and this has nothing to do with the firefighters, just so that's made clear. This is all about the administrative bookkeeping, basically. And as President Frisbee said, at the end of the year, if we can move to this, it'll make the audit go a lot smoother. I can tell you as a council, if we had this similar process with the village, we would probably be looking for a new village manager, because this would not be acceptable. That's not how it is. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying we would not, our citizens wouldn't put up with it, and we wouldn't put up with it. Okay? I mean, the biggest thing that happened when Jim took over was he wanted to get rid of those comments. Okay? Well, these comments have been pervasive all the way through. So, I'm just making you aware of the fact that you know, something's got to change. You know, the way of doing things, and I've heard in the past, well, we've always done it this way. Doesn't mean it's right. We need to be above board. As President Frisbee said, there's a lot of things on the plate of the fire authority coming up. We just spent a lot of money on a new apparatus. They're going to be looking at a possible new building or buildings, shuffling things around. That's going to require the entities to look at how much, you know, how and how much we're contributing to this authority to make it work. But I think the first step is to make sure that the citizens understand that their money is being taken care of properly and we're being good stewards. So I guess if you have any questions of myself or President Frisbee or Manager Mallory, you can ask.
No, I'd just like to echo that. That was my first thoughts when going through the packet on this, is that if these comments are pervasive, they're recurring, I mean, we owe it to the ones that we represent as a part of that authority to maintain that there are no comments, that there's no question that the finances are being handled with integrity for whatever reason, because it's a professional governmental endeavor that we're all a part of. it needs to be transparent, needs to be clear, and it needs to be to the best practical standards that we have to apply to. So there's no reason to have the comments continually.
Just so everybody understands, we had an individual, a person from Siegfried Crandall, come to the last meeting to give his report. And he basically stated that when they do the audit, they have to go through and take all the information that they're given from the authority and change it into the general accounting principles that every accountant uses, which requires them to spend a lot of time to do that. If it was being done up front, then it's an easy thing, you know. Correct, and granted, I know Siegfried Crandall does our books here for the village, I believe, correct?
They assist with the monthly bank reconciliations, but one of the advantages you not only get in a relationship like that is you have a question on setting up your fiscal year budget. I probably talked to Steve Breyer 6-8 times during setting up a budget to make sure we're, and it just gives you an added resource.
I have a question about, explain to me, what's the difference between number 2 and number 3, please?
I'd probably defer ultimately to Carl as he sits on the board. I think the difference is number 3, if there are 3 entities that don't approve the audit or more, 3 or more, I think it's not approved. So if everyone's on the same page what needs to happen in the future, there's probably more likelihood that those best practices get employed if it's not approved. But I certainly defer to people who know more about the dynamics of the fire authority than I do.
No, that's correct. The current articles that are written, if 3 entities vote against an issue, if you'll remember, the authority was looking to purchase property out southeast of town here 2 years ago, roughly. 3 of the entities, us being one of them, voted against it. It failed. So that is the case. I don't like being pessimistic, but I firmly believe, my personal opinion, that if this council wants to send a clear message, we need to do so. If we kick the can halfway, then it's going to be perceived. So
That's what I needed to know.
President Frisbee,
Yes, sir.
would you accept a motion at this time?
Yes, certainly would.
I'll propose that we move not to approve the audit, and that we should discuss what stated improvements should be made.
Support.
the only discussion I'm going to have, obviously, we have a fire board meeting Wednesday night, so I will be sharing them, this council's vote. I would appreciate if maybe staff can throw together a quick, what state of improvements would be requested, so that I at least can give them, we have not approved it, we want to see these stated improvements, so that at least we're on record.
Yeah, and after we listen to the conversation of the council, I'll probably in summary form state it yet tonight what I'm hearing, just so this board would know.
Any further discussion?
I agree, there's always room for improvement, and I've been the most vocal about the fire department. 4 years ago, I pushed for a new fire truck. We didn't buy it. $350,000 for that truck. We just paid $1 million for that truck. And we're paying for it, and we're not gonna see it for 18 months to 3 years. We need a new building. How many times have I screamed about a new building and where to put it? And I keep getting shot down. I don't care. The thing is, we gotta keep it out in the light so that the citizens know that we're trying to do something. And by taking a stand on this and saying this is what we need to do, that's what we need to do. So, yeah, I approve what we're gonna, the motion we're gonna take. So, thank you.
Well, this council, you know, via myself is sitting in as an alternate for Carl. Carl's had that message with him, you know, literally, when is the time that we can sit down and have a building committee review? How do we address this? We've given option after option. We know the path forward. Now we just need to make it happen.
At some point, I want to go to the voters. And I've been fought on this time and time again, and I don't care. Take it to the voters. Let's say, put it in where our water bill's a survey. I don't care. Would you support a tax to build a new fire station? Would you support a tax to improve the fire department, to hire in full-time officers to sit at that station? Would you approve whatever we need? And I've heard the comments time and time again, and yes, in a recent conversation, 90% of the comments I got were, yeah, let's do it. And those are from people that live in the village and outside the village.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't deny that a bit.
Well,
You know, it's like similar to the ambulance issue we're facing now.
Yeah.
Nobody doesn't want an ambulance, and I promise you, nobody doesn't want fire services. But as a board, they are responsible to set the guidance of precedent and go out for funding. The board is.
Yeah.
And we give them the encouragement as much as we can and from our vote. And when we have five entities on it now.
Yeah. I'd like to see an immediate care put in the area. Schoolcraft, Vicksburg, somewhere in between. They just built a brand new one in Portage again. You know, how long does it take to get to that care facility?
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue, though.
Well, but that's something that, yeah, we need to look at too.
Right.
And if we can't get an ambulance service in here, you know, the hospital, you know, they can't handle emergency stuff at the hospital. Where they handle a runny nose, you know, and blood tests. But at some point, someone's got to step up to the plate and say, well, this is what we need. What's it going to take to go about getting it? And that discussion's got to be opened up to the public.
Agreed. So we have a motion and support to not approve the audit. Can we do a roll call, please, Christian?
Well,
Oh, sorry.
did we want to have more discussion on that?
Absolutely. It's open.
I just wanted to say, just to make sure it's said out loud, that I do agree with staff recommendation number 1 that was proposed, to have the SKCFA engage with Siegfried Crandall to help with that reconciliation and get on board with best practices. I think that's absolutely baseline for what we want to accomplish. I don't know if others had comments more about that. I'm not an accounting professional, so I'm not sure the depth and breadth of what they're looking at and what could be needed. But I'm sure that that's just the minimum based on Manager Mallory and others' experience with those.
They actually, when he was at our meeting, he actually said that they would be more than willing to do, they would not be able to do the audit from moving forward, but they could definitely do the reconciliations or whatever it needs to be done. They didn't have a problem with that at all, so.
And so the council is aware, that's a relationship we have. We have Siegfried Crandall on a monthly basis, or Michelle and I can reach out to him anytime. And then we have Aaron Stevens' crew at Manister Corsian, or however you pronounce that, actually come in, which will be in a week from now, I think. They begin the audit. Yes. I think the practitioners within the fire authority, be it the chief and the administrator, would support it. It's a great benefit to have. Here, I mean, the way our relationship is, it's really a positive thing.
I think it only helps the organization run better when everything's in line and accessible, visible, organized.
Agreed. Any further discussion? Do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Fields, Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Olson.
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller.
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Thank you all for that. I gotta count my 12, 13. Yeah, Chad, did I miss you? Did you have any comments on the discussion we just had on the fire board?
No, I think a lot of them were answered. Thank you, though, President Frisbee.
Thank you. Well, it moves us to Mr. Mallory's manager report.
Yeah, real quick, the infrastructure project that we've always described north of the middle school started today. So we have that project going on, as well as the village-wide pickup, the fall cleaning, if you will. And that company was gracious enough and started on the streets that the infrastructure project is starting on. So that will go throughout this week to remind citizens, and we'll make a couple social media posts and put out on texting and in email system to remind them to have that out ASAP, so it's picked up this week. The south fence here at Village Hall should be in certainly by the end of November. So that will complete that. Hopefully, the council has noticed the screening that was put up on the, yeah, so, getting stuff coming together. Talked to the Prairie Street entryways coming into town by the industrial park. Will begin by mid-October as well and completed that month, so you'll see that beautification project take off. We did move the public open house to Monday, October 21st. We originally had looked at tonight, but with the new sound panels being installed and other things on the horizon, and shout out Frederick's Construction, because there's no echoes tonight from my perspective, so nice job there. And then just a reminder, Christian led a meeting this morning for Christmas in the Village, which will be held December 14th. So we're looking forward to that. And happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Any word on Big B when they're gonna open?
All right, I stopped and talked to the owners of Big B, and they're hoping that the first week of October, but they should have a better date pinpointed by the end of the month.
Yeah, I took a peek in the building yesterday, and, you know, it seems they're coming along, but, and I see they got a sign out front, they're hiring, that's about it.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're really looking forward to it.
thank you.
How about the car wash?
That's still moving forward. It's on, because of the property, there's gonna be some environmental, and it will actually, they're putting together, right now, we'll probably be putting forward a brownfield package, with the amount of, contaminants or potential contaminants within the.
All right, so it's not going to be up as soon as we thought then?
No,
Yeah.
no, but it's
Okay.
still moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question, Gail. So it takes us to a couple of committee reports. Anything new to report on trees? No. Parks and Rec?
We just had a meeting last month and kind of reviewed the Movies in the Park program, took a look at what worked, what didn't work, and are going to start putting together a schedule for 2025, which we'll present to the council, I'm sure, for approval.
That'll be pretty exciting. Cats. I do have some notes. Just one of the things they reported, Kalamazoo County has lost 3.6% in Act 51 money, just based on the census of this last year. The TIP is a Transportation Improvement Plan. They changed the focus. There's two different, there's a technical committee and then there's a policy committee. The administrative side sits on the technical, and the policy is Usually people like myself and the trustees are on it. And I don't know the really inside on it, but there's a weighting system for how they rate projects. And one of the rating that Ashimo just had a heartache with, and I know the technical committee was very excited about it. They wanted the complete street component to weight higher. And the gentleman, Mr. Guinness, the Portage. McGinnis. He expressed their desire to increase that. So they increased that component, the complete street component, from 5% to 10% weighting. So everybody was happy with that and approved the increase. And that was pretty much it from the CATs. And the Planning Commission, you had a meeting, and I think we heard a lot about it, but if you'd like to talk about it, Jed?
Yeah, Planning Commission, Kyle went over the majority of what we spent our time on last Monday. One thing that I didn't hear you mention, Mallory, was the potential for an October event. We did talk about that in our Planning Commission. Is that still something?
We're looking at it on, but we haven't committed to anything. Did anything come up this morning, Christian?
Okay. Yep, that's about it. Like I said, Mr. Mucha went over essentially what we did last Monday.
Thank you, Trustee Kissinger. South County Sewer. Much to my surprise, they're taking back, based on our staff's response. The last time I think I reported out, they were going to go on their own and not join us in the force main extension on Sprinkle Road replacement. They've rethought that, and they're going back to their committee and group and legal team to discuss that, so that's not been taken off the table. The Village of Schoolcraft and St. Joe County collaboration, they met here the 3rd. I don't know what's happened on that, but they met with a committee and some stakeholders to look for some state money investment. And the idea is, because Schoolcraft Village proper is so landlocked and they need another well, they're talking with with Fabius Parks Township area to bring up water, because they have a water system in place, so, and put in a new well for them. So that's part of the discussion there. And that's all I had on sewer. We had a fire update.
Well, just reiterating, we did have the gentleman from Siegfried Crandall come and present the audit last meeting. As Trustee Olson stated, the apparatus, I think it's still on schedule for, I believe, 2025 late, early 2026 delivery. And I'm letting everybody know that our meeting is this Wednesday at the old ambulance building at 6. So if any of you would like to come and observe, I welcome you to show up, but we'll have a meeting Wednesday night, so.
Thank you for that update. Now it's time for citizens' comments. Anything and everything that's on your mind, we'll entertain a few minutes to listen to you.
Jim Shippers, VFW Poster Banner, and I just wanted to know if, when you do your thing over on the beach, that's gonna put us out as far as doing our Veterans Day over there?
No.
That won't affect that?
No.
Okay. Then my other question was, what is the approach to get, to apply one of my VFW signs on all these islands coming into town? We had the Rotary Club and so forth. We've never had a VFW emblem on any of the islands. Most people don't even know there's a VFW post in Vicksburg. And I just wonder what I'd have to do maybe to...
I don't know, Jim, I can give you a call tomorrow. I can ask our attorney if there's anything. I don't know. I haven't done that before, so I'd seek her guidance, and then, but I'll reach back out to you with an answer.
Okay, I appreciate it, because
Yeah.
I'd like to get something up. We fit in
And
with
while
the
you're
crowd.
here, I know I think it was 6 additional people, military heroes will be featured downtown, and I had gotten a text that, so you should see those go up hopefully by the end of the week.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, appreciate that. People keep asking.
Yeah.
I tell them what I know.
Mr. President,
But,
Jim, if you can hang around after the meeting, I have something I want to give you, okay? So.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for everything you're doing, Jim.
Thank you.
So trustees' time. We'll start with trustee Olson.
Sure you want to do that. I got quite a lot. Vintage Market, our last show of the season was yesterday. Karen Jameson is taking over next year. And so I talked to Kristen earlier about getting together with her. She's on her way to Florida right now. I'm going to be taking over at the Van Buren County Historical Society, fundraising for them. Our first market is going to be this Saturday, and that's right in front of the Van Buren County Fairgrounds. South County article, news article, I got a lot of positive feedback on that. That's the one where I talked about the road commission and doing something about TU and U and Portage. And in case you have not heard, Kalamazoo County just got a huge grant. The city of Detroit got $10 million. We beat them. We're getting $25 million. So I'm going to be going to the County Road Commission meeting next Tuesday and hopefully get some more information on that. But I'm hoping and praying that some of that money can be used to fix these two intersections before someone else gets hurt or killed. New courthouse tour. I wanted to see what $94 million looks like, my God, in the road commission building. I was able to take about 10 minutes before going to my nephew's wedding, and I saw Mr. Gessler there. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I talked to a couple other people I saw, but I did have a conversation with Dana Nussel, our state attorney general, and this is the fourth time I've met Dana. I don't like her politics, but I like the lady, so, but I do get along with her. So, my nephew's wedding, yeah, it's probably the best wedding I've been to in ages. They did kind of a sports theme wedding, but the best part was they were catered by Taco Bob's. Support local business. I get a lot of comments from citizens about the mill, and nothing's going on over there, and you know what's going on this. In case you haven't seen it, there's a big crane behind the mill right now, and for the last couple of weeks, they've been replacing ceiling panels, and these are big, heavy panels. And those guys are up there on that roof in 90-degree plus temperatures. And first of all, I'd never do it, and because I got a massive fear of heights. But but anyhow, that is going on, and I know the mill is posted on Facebook about that. But the crane is still out there; the work's still continuing. Lastly, I've been asked by the state of Michigan and some libraries to start doing speaking tours. And I'm going to be speaking out on rare books. And they're trying to get more people involved with the libraries. And I have recently sold some rare books to the state of Michigan through the library system. And this is one of the reasons they've kind of come back to me and some of the local libraries. Right now I have three speaking engagements scheduled for after the first of the year in Branch County. Lastly, President Trump. Boy, thank God for the Secret Service, but thank God even more for private citizens. How many times do we have our police department say, if you see something, say something? A gentleman saw a man run out of the bushes. He thought it was unusual. He took a picture of the man. He also took a picture of his black Nissan, and he got the license plate. With the license plate readers, the information was put out through the system. They picked up on it within a matter of minutes. They pulled the guy over, and he is under arrest and looking at attempted assassinations of our former president. This is a prime reason why citizens need to be involved. If you see something, even if you're wrong, they would rather have you be wrong than to not do anything. I recently had a conversation with a young lady who wants to become a police officer. Her father's been in the military, did 3 tours of duty in Iraq. And she wants to become a canine handler. And I suggested that she talk to Scott Sanderson about it, because Scott headed up that unit for 20 years. So it makes me smile to hear this from these young people. So thank you very much, sir.
Let's jump to trustee Kissinger. If you have any comments?
Yeah, I thank you that I'm able to join virtually. I celebrated my younger brother's wedding here in Colorado, but I will be back home soon and back in the community in the next couple days. So I'm excited to see what we have moving forward. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for being on tonight, Chad. Trustee Fields.
First, I want to thank Kyle again. Although he's already left, I never fail to get an education whenever he comes in and speaks to us, and I echo Gail's thoughts that he makes it easy to understand. I also want to give a shout out to a local Vicksburg business. We give a lot of love to the restaurants and the bars and the retail stores, and some of the businesses go unnoticed until you need them. Vicksburg Family Home Care, we have had a need for their services in my family for the past few months. What an amazing group of people they are. For those of you that are looking at elder care, whether it be in-home or nursing homes, you can go down a rabbit hole, but to have something of this caliber local has been an absolute blessing for us lately. So, Vicksburg Family Home Care. There you go.
Thanks. Trustee Wagner.
Well, I wanted to start similar to Trustee Fields. I appreciate the staff and McKenna and Kyle's leadership and commitment continually here on executing on that mission to improve zoning and ordinance for us. I know Tim and myself have said it a couple times, but generational impact is that kind of stuff when we make these changes to help steer it in the direction that's going to be what we believe to be the best for everybody. And we've got to make these changes, otherwise that change will never come. So we've got to keep that ball rolling and make those changes. And I just appreciate the continued commitment to getting that done. Village Hall landscaping, fences look great. I mean, when I drove up today, it was night and day, because I'll be honest, I don't get out of the house much these days.
Wonder why.
So it's nice to get out for a couple minutes, fresh air, and see the beautiful work we've done here. It really just makes everything else look that much better, and it's making me even more proud to have this as that focal point in our community. It's right there, and it's everything we want it to be. The sound panels in here are fantastic. As Michelle made a comment earlier that I'll echo is, I'm glad that this worked, because I don't really want to pay for more or to do it differently. So, yeah, so that's it for me this evening. Thank you.
Trustee Reeser.
As I said before, I really appreciate Kyle and Jim's efforts and the entire staff in keeping us going forward. But I also want to say that I brought a friend over because I was so proud of the Village Hall, and so I brought a friend over. Jim was nice enough to take us around and show us all through, even over in the police department. But when we left, she just said, boy, Vicksburg is really, really going forward. And I said, yes, they are. And she said, I'm going to have my friends come here and shop. And so it was a very positive visit.
Thanks. President Pro Tem Keller.
I'll be brief. Jim, thanks to you and the staff, and for Kyle for everything you've done with the proposed text amendments for the zoning. Also, thank you to everybody for listening to everything we had to say regarding the fire authority. Once again, this is not anything against the firefighters at all. This has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with how we function as an authority, so I do appreciate that. And looking forward to Christmas in the Village. I've already informed my grandkids, so they're already getting excited, so thank you.
Thanks. I'll be brief myself and echo the sentiments. Jim, thanks for your and Kyle's and your staff's hard work, getting the zoning ordinances and the parking ordinances, getting them lined up. So that's been a huge benefit. I've had several people tell me we need to run bird days further into the fall. we need more Berg days. But the most impressive thing is, there's some people that drive through here on every morning on their way down to Three Rivers to go to work. And he was just telling me how, just blown away they are, how beautiful this village looks. Every morning, 6 o'clock, 6:30, they're going through town. DPW, Jimmy, his team's out there cleaning, emptying everything. And they're just awestruck about the beauty of the downtown, how clean it is, how the people act, and how friendly everybody is. So, yeah, Vicksburg is good to be Vicksburg right now. Thanks for all your hard work and your dedication, team. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.